Hi, my name's Anna Cox. I am a special education teacher at the elementary level. So I currently work in a co-taught classroom as a special ed teacher alongside a general education teacher at the third grade level. But I've also worked in co-tots in fourth grade and fifth grade. And before that, I worked as an inclusion facilitator across K through 5. So I've been loving that. I've been doing that for it's my seventh year now.
So my name's Madison. I am a special education teacher. I teach fourth and fifth grade students in the sub-separate ABA-based classroom. And it's my third year in this role at this school, and it's my fourth year teaching overall. I think inclusion can look like so many different things, and I think the social piece is definitely on the back burner a lot of the times, especially as the kids get older. I think it can, in my experience, I've worked in inclusive settings with kindergartners, and I felt like that was a lot easier to kind of get those social relationships, because that is what a kindergarten classroom is about in general. But once the kids start getting older, that emphasis on the social relationships and how to include kids of all types of abilities becomes put on the back burner.
The academic inclusion and that piece often has a bigger emphasis, but I think they really deserve to have equal, if not more emphasis really on the connecting to friends and making long-lasting relationships. And truly that is the thing that when you think about your experience growing up, having friends and going to school is really what people look forward to, and just having those connections in that community.
So my classroom is a sub-separate classroom of all kids with disabilities. So, there's not always built-in inclusion opportunities for my students to go hang out and spend time with other kids that are like the same age as them. So luckily we have really good staff at our school that support this. And so we all kind of try to collaborate on, hey, how can we kind of create opportunities like lunch bunches, sending some of my students to specials or to science or to maybe more like social studies, science kind of things that don't involve, so that they get to be with me for core content, but that these other things that they get to kind of interact with peers that are the same age as them, that may or may not have disabilities. When they're in those settings, trying to make sure that our kids aren't at their own table, that they've really tried to bring them in and talk to the teachers whose classes they're going to, of let's get them, mixed in with the other students. And something that I'm working on with another fifth grade teacher right now, is this idea of trying to see if there's a time that some kids from the gen ed fifth grade classes and fourth grade classes can come in to our class. Maybe, in my class, we do Fun Friday. So we thought, oh, let's do a Fun Friday activity, or we could do a read aloud activity where kids can read to each other. So we're trying to see what other opportunities are for that. So it's not, for my students, a lot of change of routine is hard. And so if we can keep them in their comfortable space, why don't we bring some kids into our space?
Where students are learning about neurodiversity all the time throughout the day in many different ways, and whether that be like through a direct lesson or through connections that we set up, like morning meeting. We also do that by using books, diverse books that feature characters who come from many different backgrounds and have diverse perspectives and representation. When they see all these things talked about more openly, they're more likely to support each other in moments where, even if they might not express their need or that feeling the same way the other student is expressing it, I've noticed so many cases of students reaching out to another student and saying, oh, this is what I do when I feel upset. Do you need some help? Or, hey, like, I see that you want to move a lot. Do you want to go for a walk with me? Model communication in many different ways, and all the different modes of communication. Students can use their words to communicate in many different ways. They can use it by typing, they can use it verbally, they can use sign language, they can use gestures, they can show their emotions on their face.
Showing the kids who are in gen ed that, like, look at some of our kids and wonder, like, can they talk and this and that, and realize that there's more ways to communicating than talking.
Along that same line, helping students, redirecting students to speak directly to each other, and not about each other, in front of each other, to teachers. I've seen like some really nice like beginnings of friendships develop, students independently typing on their iPad to a student who has an AAC device and connecting over like shared jokes and shared experiences, and honoring that student's way of communicating and knowing that's their device, that's for them to use as their voice, how they choose, but we can connect in that way. With every student has different wonderful strengths and amazing talents and things that might be niche interests, or ways that they could connect with other students. So we try to do that a lot just daily, like through shares and through connection activities. They genuinely like recognize each other's strengths and like know that about each other, and will share that with people. You know, they'll be like, "Oh, you didn't know? He's great at math. Let me tell you." Or he told me this yesterday. Isn't that hilarious?
A lot of students in my class this year who are artists. So really, just really good artists. So to me, I've really been trying to think, okay, so let me find an art class that they can go to and hang out with other peers, because that gives them kind of something to bridge the gap with. One of my boys and a boy from another class, they both love to do art, and so they're doing chalk together at recess, and then they're in art inclusion together, and they're kind of showing each other their art. And it's really beautiful. It's really a connection that I never thought was going to happen. And it doesn't seem like they're saying much to each other, but there's a lot of kind of like, oh, look at my thing, look at my thing. I have other students who I've found ways to incorporate them into the gym class that other fifth graders go to. And science is big with the fifth grade, of course, in Massachusetts, because of the MCAS. It's when they start doing the science MCAS. So I've tried to send them to science classes with other kids. So I've really tried to see, okay, what is the interests that will help them to be able to kind of bridge that gap of
like thoughtfully pairing students who we know might be like showing interest in getting to know each other has been really something that we try to do. So whether it's like in small group math, or they're reading together, or playing a game together, just giving that kind of opportunity to arrange the physical space, so like have seating arrangements that make sense and are not too overwhelming, but also to kind of think these two I've seen them interact in this way before. They seem really interested in getting to know each other. It might be kind of cool to have them try to work on this thing together, or approach this task together, or play this game together. So and then I think the other kind of like broader category of like how we think about helping students like form friendship is just by like giving them time to connect. I've seen so many cases of students just naturally with that time and space being able to connect in really beautiful and meaningful organic ways. And so being really mindful of like aid support and teacher support, and giving students like reducing the proximity of adults near them, right? Because we want them to have that opportunity to like freely connect and not feel like they're restricted in any way.
We need to provide a little bit of structure, but then it's you got to find that happy middle ground, right? Because then if it's too much structure, and too much over guidance, then they're not able to have these natural conversations.
But then also providing free choice time, recess time, that also normalizes many different types of play. So
for the sub-separate classrooms, we just used to just choose our own recess time wherever it fit. But this year, all kids are going to the same recess and lunchtime for their grade, regardless of classrooms. It was a little chaotic at first because there's just more kids out there, but everyone's mingling together so much more, and the kids are all playing with each other, and I think it's been great.
I think recess is a fantastic time where students really have just so much choice and so much like agency, and with that reduced like adult support, because naturally you're just not in the same physical space as teachers. And so I think it really allows them to connect a little bit more freely on interest, and have a little bit more opportunity to explore when students like create games together. That's been really awesome. So in the past, I had a few students who like a small group of students who like would just come together at recess, like every day at recess, and they had the best time. And they would create like they had created a whole like slew of games that I never really quite knew what the rules were, and I don't even know if there were rules. It was just let's have a good time with this thing that we really all love. And it was just like pure just joy and just happiness. And I know that it carried outside of school, because a lot of students might not enjoy doing like what people might think of as like typical like field games at recess or swings or things like that. Having other alternative options at recess that provided structure gives them more opportunity to connect with others in a less intimidating way, to have that available for them. So we've had Explorers Club, we've had Walking Club, we've had all sorts of different art club, things that happen outside, but where students can kind of connect freely in that way. But they have so much choice, either at school after programs or at other community centers. It's really cool to like have kids coming back the next day and being like, oh my gosh, like we had the best, game last night, or we did the best thing, or we watched the coolest movie. And so just like all of the other, like the array of things that students are allowed to do and able to do at those in those settings, I think just opens up to a whole nother world of experiences. Like students are just happy. Like that's like too basic to say, but like genuine, just like happiness, like on both sides. But and I think I touched on this too earlier before, but the increased ability to like problem solve has been really cool to see, and increased ability to communicate as a benefit for both students, but definitely the students without disabilities, and just that more kind of genuine understanding of communication and expression of needs and desires and joy, learning from others and noticing the strengths that others have, and feeling like the reciprocal like back and forth in relationship of being able to share and learn from each other, I think has been the biggest benefit. Instead of having like reactions of like confusion or fear or like wanting to stand back when they see somebody trying to communicate a hard feeling or an emotion, I'm seeing students without disabilities feeling, I think, very, very comfortable and very much genuinely just wanting to care for each other.
So I think it's giving them that opportunity to just meet people that they otherwise wouldn't meet, for one. And I think I have other students who just learn from watching others, right? So, I have some kids now who are just, I see that, I've heard that they are enjoying playing basketball more, where otherwise if they don't have other peers that would be teaching them that, or that they could imitate, they would have no other way of knowing. So
that there's going to be a lot richer learning experiences. So that impacts, I think, the way that teachers feel about the teaching that they're able to do and the learning that happens. Have a community that feels more like united and comfortable and caring towards each other. It definitely makes everything else, all the other things that teachers are doing and the learning that they're trying to make happen on any given day, it makes that all feel more comfortable, more worth it, more.
with everything I do with teaching, too, sometimes there's moments where I have a thought about something or a suggestion and I think that's not going to work. That's not going to work. And, it's one of those things where I think it's purely just, let's try it. If it doesn't work, we try it a few times and then, we edit, we go from there. The results in it far outweigh like the work that's put in. And I think it's a lot of front work, but once you get yourself in a good system of it, then it'll be easier for years to come and it'll be, much more worth it in the long run. I've seen the biggest pushback is more from the gen ed teachers just kind of being afraid of like not knowing what to do with our students. And you have to just kind of do it, right? And the admin too. I mean, I think there's some admin in my school that would not know what to do with some of my kids, right? And I think people are just afraid. And it would really be normalizing it for everyone. And same with parents. I think that parents also, on the flip side, I could see some of my students' parents being like, these kids are not going to get my kids. And then other parents thinking like, I don't want my students around kids with disabilities, right? But really trying to communicate that like everyone benefits when you start, with this kind of like ground up thinking, right? And that you're not going to be holding anyone back. It's only going to raise everyone up a step.
With all the things that teachers feel pressure to like perform and do, the biggest one of those things, right, is to like help students like academically. There's a really large argument to be made that like this, like supporting this work and developing friendships really lends itself to students with and without disabilities feeling more connected to each other, more connected to school, more connected to a classroom community, which I think promotes then in the end also learning. And once you kind of shift your mindset, you're able to see that a lot of the things, like once you start them, feel just embedded throughout the day. For example, like the intentional groupings, right? Like that's like, you're going to be in small groups anyway for math. Like it'd be cool if if you just take a little bit of extra time to think about what would be like a really cool way to group students, or what would.
Looking at my upbringing, I wasn't around people with disabilities. I think that a lot of the kids in my upbringing were kind of in a separate area of the building. And so I look at kind of how this is playing out for our students. And even with all of the qualms, I think the schools nowadays are doing so much better than they ever have, which is great. And I see these opportunities that exist and how I try to incorporate my students with all students in the school.
There's nothing better than just having perspectives in your life and friends in your life who are just from all these different beautiful experiences and backgrounds. So it's made me really reflect on that as like an adult, and then really want that for for children, So I think that's kind of where it all kind of comes together for me.